this is Gina. Today I'm going to show you how to make this bracelet. It's just fringing through a peyote base. I am using beads from the Summer Bling Fling treasure bag. I'm continuing to make tutorials with those, as well as I did do one already, but I will start doing them with the Splash of Color treasure bag too. But as always, all of these tutorials are made with beads that you can find in shapes and sizes pretty easily. If I do not offer them on my website, then you will find them in other places, but they are pretty easily found beads, so you can always follow along with all of these tutorials. You do not have to have the treasure bags. I want to make sure of that. That's why I put in my treasure bags a lot of smaller beads, so we can do bead weaving projects, and you can get the same beads that I'm using wherever you're at, if you're in another country or whatever. So I do make my tutorials for everybody. I'm going to take this off and I'll be right back and I'll show you what it looks like. And here it is. It really turned out really pretty. I really like how it turned out. I want to say really quickly that I will be going on vacation for the first time in many years. I'm going to go, since I stayed home with my mom when she was ill, and then COVID before that. It's been about 3 years, and my son in the meantime has bought himself a home and established himself, and I have not been able to even go and see his home. I'm speaking of my older son. My younger son is going to have a child real soon, around December. So I am going to go for a week and see my oldest son in September. So I will be gone the 1st through the 10th. So I'm going to try to get as many tutorials done as I can, and I will postpone filling orders on my website through the 1st, from the 1st through the 10th. But I'm going to go visit my son for 10 days, and then around Christmas time, I will take some more time and go spend some time with my younger son and his wife after they have the baby, so that I can be there and help with the baby. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. And I'm going to get as many tutorials done on these 2 bags as I possibly can. When I come back, I will do some more, and I will put out my autumn treasure bag. So anyway, let's go ahead and look and see what what it takes to make this particular project, and we'll get started. Okay, for this project, I will be using some of the beads from the Summer Bling Fling treasure bag. I'm using what's left over of a lot of things, and I'm also using the strand of 2mm cubes. Now, you either have a purple or a blue strand, and either one will work. And you can use any beads you'd like. You do not have to do this with treasure bag beads. You can use any beads under 6mm, will work great. I am using one 6mm bead, 6mm round pearls that were left in my bag. And you don't want to go any bigger than that, and you don't want to use a lot of 6mm. I mean, you could, but it looks better if you have smaller beads. So what I'm going to use is the 6mm round pearl. I'm going to use the 3x4 or 4mm round, I can't remember, of the coral beads, what I have left of them. I'm going to use what I have left of some of the little 3mm bicones that are peach colored. I'm going to use, of course, the 2mm cubes. In this one, I'm using blue. I'm going to use some of the leftover 3x4 indigo blue beads. You have some 3x4 purples if you had the purple bag. I'm going to use what's left over of my little 4mm cubes, and this is the blue color. You might have purple. I'm going to use the 5 flower beads. Now, if you're doing this, you can use any kind of flower bead that you can come up through the middle of, or you don't have to use a flower bead at all. You could just do it all fringing. That'll work fine too. So this tutorial is not just for the treasure bag. It's a basic tutorial. You can use anything you want with it. For the base, we're going to make peyote, and I'm going to use an 8/0 seed bead. This is a round. You can use delicate. I just find that rounds are easier to fringe through, and Tohos are pretty uniform in shape, so they work really well for this. This is a Toho 8/0, and it is the galvanized permanent finish Starlight. I'm also going to be using 15/0 seed beads, and 11O seed beads. You don't need a lot of 11Os, but you do need some for the clasping area and also to fringe up through these flowers because the hole is too big for a 15O. And my 15O, my 11Os are also Toho Galvanized Permanent Finish Starlight. And you need a pretty good pile of 15Os because you're going to use that mostly for your fringing with the smaller beads. And a pretty good amount of 8Os to do your base. So you want to have at least 10-15 grams out. I don't know that you'll use that much, but you want to have a lot out so that you can do this project. We are going to be using 2 wire guardians for this. You could conceivably just go up through your 8O and put on your clasping, but for this project I am going to prepare it with the wire guardians. This is a size 1, it's a small. You could use a little bigger one if you would like. You will just have to squeeze it together and just get it to fit the best you can. I'm going to use the lobster claw clasp, and then I've got a variety of sizes of jump rings, heavier gauge, so that I can use them with my clasping. I'll put the lobster claw on with a small one and probably put a small one and then put a couple bigger ones. You could also use more bigger ones for your for an extension for this bracelet if you would like. So these are about 8mm round, and this one's about 7mm round. It doesn't really matter. These are about 4mm round. So just a combination of those for your clasping. And then with these flower beads, I have noticed some of them have a closed hole. So I've just been taking this little auger and I just push it through and the hole breaks open so that you can use it. So anything pokey, you can poke your hole through. And that is what I'm going to be using for beads. And then I'm going to use a size 12. You can also use a size 10 beading needle. And I'm going to use some 12-pound Nanofil. You could also use 10 or 8-pound Nanofil. You can also use 6 or 8-pound Fireline. And then you're going to put onto your needle a full wingspan at the very least of thread. To start this project, you will need to extend during this project, and I will post a video in the description box beneath the video player to show you how to do that. Now if I forget, just bring it to my attention. Sometimes when I'm posting my videos I forget to do that. And go ahead and put a wingspan on, which is when you stretch your arms out from side to side. You measure from the fingertips of your first arm, the length of that first arm, across your chest, the length of the second arm, to your fingertips on that arm, and that is a wingspan. Go ahead and put that on your beading needle and we will get started. Okay, to start this project, we're going to start with our wire guardian. Put it on and get it ready for clasping. Also, make a preparation to begin our peyote stitch. So, pick up your wire guardian and then guide your needle through one of the tubes on the wire guardian. So there's tubes on either side of it. Just go through one and then pull your thread through until you come to the end, but leave a couple of inches so that you have something to hold on to. And then go through the other side of the wire guardian while holding on to it like this. Cover it with your thumb and your finger and pull your thread through. You're holding onto your tail, you're holding onto the wire guardian, and you're guiding your thread up through the divot on the wire guardian, just like this. Then you're going to pick up an 8O seed bead, and you're going to go through the other side of the wire guardian. So you're coming out of this side, we're going to go into the opposite side, hold on again to your wire guardian, your tail, and squeeze a little bit between your thumb and your finger, and pull your thread through. And bring this little 8O seed bead up to the wire guardian like this. I'm going to pull a little bit more, bring it up, just like that. And then you are going to go through the other side of the wire guardian. So again, go over to this side, cover with your thumb and your finger, pull your thread through, and feel that thread guide into the divot on top of the wire guardian. Just like that. That's what you've got. Go back through the 8-0 seed bead. I'm holding on to it again between my thumb and my finger. I know you can't see it, but that's the way you have to do it to keep control of it. Now let's get even closer here so you can see what I've done. I basically have an 8-0 seed bead just laying sideways and a wire guard in on top of it. That's what I have. I'm going to move my tail out of the way just a little bit. I don't want to get rid of it yet, but I will get rid of it soon. And then I am going to pick up two 11-0 seed beads. Yeah, that's an 11-0. It looked funny. And then 4 8-0 seed beads and 2 11-0 seed beads. And I'm going to come, so I have 2 11-0, 4 8-0, 2 11-0, and I'm coming through the opposite side of the 8-0 from which I'm coming out. So I'm coming out of this side, I'm going into this side, I'm going to hold on to it again like this, between my thumb and my finger, and just pull these beads down to that 8-0. Just like this. This is what you should have. Now, you're going to turn your piece and go into the 8-0s, or excuse me, the 2 11-0 seed beads here. And we're just going to go through the 2 11-0s. We're going to try to get a shape here. So just go through the 2 11-0s, pull your thread through, make sure there's no slack, and then go up through the 4 8-0s all together. We're trying to establish a bit of a shape. It won't be perfect, but go through all 4 of those. Again, I'm holding my fingers on them like this, just so I can draw my thread through and then go up through these 2 here. Now, I want to kind of push these 8-0s into a straight line like this. Then I'm going to go through the 8-0 that the clasping is on, or the wire guardian's on, and the 2 11-0s here. Now I have this funny little hanger looking thing. Looks like a coat hanger, kind of. I want to make sure my tension is good and get these back in line. Just be patient with it. It takes a minute, and that's okay. You can take a minute just to arrange it so it's nice and neat. And we're going to sew through these 4 one more time. Just like this, just so it draws them together nice. And this is what I have. Now, I'm going to pick up an 8-0 seed bead. I'm going to skip the 8-0 seed bead I'm coming out of and go into the next 8-0 seed bead. And in order not to distort my piece, I'm going to hold it between my fingers again. Just go through the next 8-0. So you're skipping the one you're coming out of, you're picking up an 8-0, and you're going into the next 8-0. Hold it between your thumb and your finger and pull. Now, that bead should land on top of the first bead. That's going to be a little funny looking. It'll straighten out as we do this, but that's where that should be. Then you pick up another 8-0 seed bead. You're coming out of this bead, you're going to skip this bead, and you're going to go into this last bead here and pull this 8-0 seed bead down. And this is what you have. Now you're going to pick up another 8-0 seed bead. You're going to skip the one you're coming out of and go into the sticking up 8-0 seed bead. And again, hold your fingers together. This really helps you put your beads into place and pull on them so they straighten out and without distorting everything terribly. Then pick up an 8-0 seed bead, skip the one that's recessed and go into the one sticking up right here. Pull it down. And it's starting to kind of look like a weird peyote. It will straighten out, don't worry. The end will be kind of weird at first, and that's all right. Pick up another 8-0 seed bead. You're coming out of this one, you're going to skip it and go into the one that's sticking up. After a while, you won't have to hold your fingers over it like I'm doing to pull the beads through, but in the beginning here, we really need to straighten this out. So we're getting good tension. If you hold onto it and pull on your thread, you get nice tension. Then you're going to pick up another 8/0. You're going to skip the bead that's recessed and go through the bead sticking up. And basically that's what we're going to keep doing. When we go to the end of when we are at the end of our piece, we pick up an 8/0 and we go into the sticking up bead. And then we pick up an 8/0 and go into the next sticking up bead, which is the end again. Then you're going to pick up an 8/0 and go into the next sticking up bead. And we're just going to keep repeating this until we get the length of bracelet, about an inch short of where we want to be, and I'll show you that as I get a little bit further along. You can also come back up here and straighten this back up a little bit. Now that you've got a little peyote established, you can get those beads to line up a little bit. They're always going to be a little crooked on the top. They just are. That's just going to happen. But now you're just going to continue and do peyote stitch. Very simple once it's established to do this. So we're just going to keep going through the beads that are sticking up, placing a bead in between them, just like this. Very simple, very fast moving. Just keep going. Now, we're going to keep going until we're about an inch short of the length we want. And I will show you that when I come back. Now, we also, this little wire guardian isn't quite secured up here. So make sure you keep your tail here. We'll sew that tail back through so that we can establish a little bit more of a tightness on that wire guardian. And I'll show you that when we come back also. So when you make your tail, make sure you make enough room to sew it back through. So you may want to leave about 4, 5, 6 inches, something like that, just to make sure that we can sew that back through a little bit. Okay? Be back in a moment and show you how long we need to go. Just keep doing your peyote. And you can see as I progress just how nice and neat everything has straightened out and looks really good. Again, just leave your tail there because we are going to secure that a little bit better. But go ahead and keep working and just progress through the entire piece, and we'll be back when we get the length that we want. Okay, so I have finished my peyote, the length of my bracelet, and as you can see I have just a little over 6 inches if I measure it from the tip of this wire guardian. So by the time I put the other wire guardian side on, I'll have about 6.5, 6 3/4 inches of length, and I want to make just a little over a 7-inch bracelet. So you'll want to judge that by how big it is on your wrist or whoever you're making it for, and make your peyote to that point just a little bit short of the length you want. So as you can see here, I still have about a 1/2 inch. So by the time I put on my wire guardians, they should be real close together, because though our clasping will take up a little bit of room, so will our fringing. As we do this, it can kind of crumple and pull the bracelet in together a little bit. So you'll want to judge how long you want your bracelet, considering the size of your clasping and considering your wire guardian area here. Once you've determined the length that you want for your bracelet and you've made your peyote to that point, we're going to sew in the wire guardian on this side again. Now I've extended my Fireline because I didn't leave enough room to sew in this wire guardian, and I feel like I need to do that. Now I did, after I extended, go back up through the wire guardian again and back through this 8/0 seed bead here. So you can do that if you need to. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a needle on this end and sew this in, and then we will continue with the other end, putting our clasping on. So let me thread my needle. So I have threaded my needle, and once you get in real close, just so you can see, my my Fireline or my Nanofil is coming right out of this 8/0 seed bead. So after I extended my line, which you will not need to do if you leave enough, you may want to leave, I have too much here now, but you leave about 6-8 inches so that you can sew back through without much hindrance of your needle being too long. So then once I did that, it was kind of sticking out here on the side. I just brought it through the 8/0 seed bead and back around the wire guardian again, and I'm coming out of the 8/0. Now I am going to go ahead and go into these two 11/0s next to the 8/0 seed bead here and pull through. And I have a little extension, so let me pull that through. And if you didn't leave enough, of course, you can extend yours too, just like I did. Let me back off just a little here. And then I'm just going to go back through this first seed bead here. And just to make this look a little bit better right here, I'm going to pick up an 11/0 seed bead. And I'm going to go through the next 8/0 just to fill in this area here and make it more even. Because of peyote, we have that little opening there. So I'm just going to throw a little 11/0 seed bead in. And it does stack up a little bit higher, but it makes it a little bit more even. Now that I've done that, I'm just going to sew over into the bead next to the one I'm coming out of here on the end of my bracelet. And then I'm going to sew up into the next one here. And then I'm just going to tie a knot right here, just to secure everything on this end of the bracelet. I'm going underneath this thread bridge between the two beads, making a loop, and then going through the loop and drawing a knot down. And then I'll just sew into my peyote on this edge a little bit more. If you wanted to, you could even put a little fringe on the edge if you don't like the thread showing. But I'm using a lightweight thread and it doesn't look too bad. So I'm just sewing through a couple. And then I'm just going to cut this off close to my piece. If you'd like to, you can leave a little tag, burn it down, and that would be another little knot. So now this end that we originally first did is done and ready. Now we have to go down to the end that we've been working on, and we have to prepare it for clasping also. So, sorry, need to adjust a little here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and pick up my needle on this side. It's still on my working thread, and I am going to, you may have to rethread if you use the same needle. I'm just going to go ahead and grab two 11/0 seed beads and an 8/0 and two 11/0 seed beads onto my needle, just like this. And I'm going to go from this bead over to this one here and just draw this down. It's wrapped around my finger. Oh no. And just keep drawing it down till it looks like this. Now I have my opening here on this side, so I'm going to pick up an 11/0 seed bead and I'm going to go between these two beads here, right here. So pick up an 11/0 and go through. If you pick up an 8/0, it's just going to stand up high again and you're still going to have gaps. So pick up an 11/0, pull that down, and then go into your last 8/0 here. Okay, now just to make this secure, I'm going to go up through all 4 of these beads again, here, and then back through the 4 beads in my first little line of peyote here. So I'll go through this edge one, and then through my 11/0, pull my thread through, and then I'm going to go back through these 2 here. Just to secure it, make it so that that first line doesn't get all pulled weird. And then I'm going to go up through 2 11/0s and the 8/0 on the little extension we just put on here. And I am just going to sew through that 8/0, exit the 8/0, and so pull my thread through. And then I'm going to grab my wire guardian. I'm going to go through one end of my wire guardian like this. I'm going to bring it down to my piece and just balance it on top of that 8/0 that's laying sideways like this. And then I'm going to go into the other side of the wire guardian. I'm going to put my thumb and finger together, and I'm going to pull this thread down and guide it into the divot on top of the wire guardian, just like this. And then go into the opposite side of the 8/0 seed bead. Pull my wire guardian straight down on top of that 8/0. You can squeeze it in a little bit, or you can wait until you're done sewing and then squeeze it in so that it fits on top of that 8/0 nicely. Now I'm just going to turn this a little bit and sew back through this a couple times. So I'm going to go back up through this side of the wire guardian, just like that, and then I'm going to hold on to it again. I'm going to put my needle through this side, hold on to it, and guide my thread into that divot. If you squeeze it a little bit, you should feel your thread just slide into the divot on top of that wire guardian. I'm going to do this 2 more times just to make sure it's very secure, because the wire guardian can be a little sharp on the edges. And we'll come back and start our embellishments. Okay, so now that we've secured our wire guardian onto that 8/0 seed bead, I'm just going to hold on to this and just gently close it a little bit by squeezing it with my chain nose pliers, just to have it lay on top of that 8/0 seed bead a little bit better. And then I'm coming out of the 8/0 after securing the wire guardian. I'm going to go into these 2 11/0 seed beads here. I am again going to sew through all 4 of these beads down below the clasping here. So I'm going to go through this 8/0 and then the 11/0 next to it. And they're at funny angles, so we'll see if I can actually do it. Yeah, I got through those 2. And then I'll get through the next 2. And then, once we have done that, I'm going to sew down just a little ways because I want to leave about a 1/2 inch of just my peyote. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go, I'm coming out of this 8/0 seed bead here. I'm just going to go into this next one here. Make sure everything's not so weird. And then I'm going to sew up into the next one. So I'm coming out of this one, I'm going to go up into the one right next to it. And that way my thread will draw down between the beads and you won't be able to see it as I travel down. So right about here will be fine. So I'm going to start my embellishments here. Okay, so now that I am in position where I want to start my peyote, I'm about the 4th bead down here. I am going to just go up into the bead right above that, so that I'm a little ways away from the edge here and I can start my embellishments. Now, when I do my embellishments with my small cubes, which are going to be the most that I use, and then I'll just kind of speckle in the others, I only need to go through 1 bead. So I'm going to pick up my little cube. This is my 2mm cube, and then a 15/0 seed bead. And I'm going to drop this down to my piece. Now, I'm coming out of this bead here. I'm going to go back into that bead. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to avoid the 15/0 seed bead on top of the cube, and then go through the cube, and then just go back down into this 1 bead. Now, when we use a little bit bigger beads, we'll go back into the bead next to it. But on this one, I can just go through that same bead and pull this down. Make sure that your 15/0 goes right on top of that. There's no slack, and it's laying directly on top of the peyote stitch. Now, I want to figure out where I want to do my next one. So I think what I want to do, and you can do this also if you'd like, is I think I'm going to bring one up through here and then come out through this bead. So you can use 2 beads if you would like. If you want to get close to the edge, I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to pick up a 2mm cube. I'm going to pick up a 15/0 seed bead. I'm going to go back through the cube and ignore the 15/0 And then I'm coming out of this 8/0 right here. Let me get you an even, whoops, maybe not that close. Come on, there you go. So I'm coming out of this cube right here. And I'm going to go, or out of this 8/0 here, I'm going to go into this one right here. And now that will place my cube right between those two 8/0s in my peyote stitch. And I'll pull this down. If you have a problem pulling it down, just grab a hold of your 15/0, lift it up, and then pull your thread, and it'll come right down nice and tight onto your piece. So that's what you want those pieces to look like. Then I'm going to go up into this one, so I'm coming out of the edge, I'm going to go up into this one, and I think I want to go into this bead here. And I'm just going to grab another one of my tiny cubes, and I am going to pick it up, drop down a 15/0 seed bead on top of it, go back into the crystal and just ignore the 15/0, and then go back into the 8/0 I started in. Just go straight back down into it on the same side that I'm coming out of, right there. And then I will just continue just moving around, putting these in any way I want. I think now I want to use a little bit bigger bead, so I can show you how to do that. Not any different really, except for we're going to go into the bead next to it, or we can go into the bead here. Either way, just place it so that it has enough room to lay nice and tight against the peyote. So I'm going to pick up this 4mm cube. I'm going to pick up a 15/0 seed bead and drop them down to the piece. Sorry, did that kind of clumsily. And then I'm going to go back through the cube, and then this one, I'm coming out of this bead here, so I'm going to go into the bead right next to it. I could conceivably go down here if I wanted to also, but I'm just going to go into this next one because there's more space on the bottom of a 4mm, so I'm going to give it 2 beads to anchor to. Bring it down, make sure you get it nice and tight against that peyote, just like that. And let me back off just a little bit here. And now I'm going to pick up another little tiny bead, and I'm going to drop this little tiny 2mm cube down. Come on, 15/0 seed bead, and go back into it. So this bead also has that 4mm on it, and it's okay. I can still go through it just like this, and then I can just decide where I want to go next. So I think I want to go into this one right here. As long as you're next to a bead next to the one you're coming out of. So you just want to go into the beads next to each other so that you will end up with a nice little piece without a bunch of thread showing. Now I'm just going to put on a few more beads here, and then when I get to the flower, I will come back and show you how to do that. You can just randomly put them on however you want. I'm going to make little clusters in mine and just kind of move it through. Let me show you an example of one that I started just to make sure that it was going to work before I showed you guys. So this is how I did it. I just did a bunch of blue ones, and then I did a cube, and then I did my flower kind of off to the side, and then some more. I put a 6mm pearl on, and when I do that, I'll show you how to do that too. It's not any different, it's just that you have to go through 2 beads on the bottom like I showed you with the 4mm cube. Then I just put on some peach colored beads and then some more cubes here, and just move down until I put my next flower on. It does not matter how you do this. You can do it any way you want to do it, just as long as you keep your thread between the beads nice and neat so that you cannot see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a few more beads, small beads, then I'll come on and I will put on the flower and then show you how to do that, and then we'll do a 6mm round also. Okay, so I didn't put much more on, just another little cube and then one of my coral rounds. And I have decided that I want this flower to be right about here. So I'm coming out of a bead here, and I'll show you close up in a minute. But I want this one to kind of be off towards the edge, and you want to just kind of lay out and figure out where you want your beads to be, because then you'll know exactly where to start planning for them. So I want this one here, and I think I'll have one about here, one about here. We have 5 of them, so then this is how I want to do this. So you can kind of figure out where you want to space it, because since I left a little bit of extra here, I'm going to leave some here too. So I can put them about a ½ an inch apart, something like that. Just look at it and just kind of gauge it. They do not have to be perfect. You do not have to measure. Just plan for what you're going to do. Now, I have, let's get you in a little bit here. I have my thread coming out. I put on this bead here. I went back through this bead and then came down into this one right here. And now, you're not going to be doing exactly the same thing I am, because there's just no way to do that. This is random. So then I'm just going to come up through my flower bead. I'm coming out of the bead I want to be in. I'm going to go up through my flower bead from the back of it and place this down here where I want it. I'm going to pick up an 11/0 seed bead to make sure that the 15/0 will probably fall through that hole. So I'm just going to use an 11/0, drop it down in the center of the flower there. I'm going to go back through, or excuse me, around the 15/0, back through the flower, and then I'm just going to let it drop a little so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to go into this bead right next to the one I'm coming out of, right here. I'm going to come up through this, and then I'm just going to pull it all down. Now your thread can get really wrapped around these little fringes, so just go slowly and make sure that you draw it down carefully without your thread getting all wrapped up. Now you can see I have my pretty little flower here. And then I'm coming out of this bead right here. Get you in close again. Right underneath that flower. I'll just sew up into, or I could conceivably even put something there, but I think I'll sew up into the bead right next to it. And pull my thread through and tighten my flower to make sure that it's nice and in position. Otherwise, when you put your next fringe on, if it's not already tight and in position, it will be loose the entire time, because your next fringe is going to set that flower in. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put in one more little cube and just do it whatever you think is going to look good. I bent my needle. I'm really squeezing my needle for some reason. Pick up a 15/0. Come here, you little bead. And drop it down to that also. Just a little bit more graceful than I'm doing it. All right. Jeez, there we go. And then around the 15/0, and then I'll just go back into that bead that I'm coming out of. Just right back down into the same side. Pull this down. I'm going to put a couple more little blue ones here, and then I'll come back and show you how to put on a 6mm round. Okay, so I put on a little indigo bead, a little rondelle, and then I put on another of my little cubes, and now I want to put on a pearl. So I just sewed back down from this area, going through my beads, making sure that as I sew through, I make sure that my thread hides between the beads. So just make sure you sew through the beads like I showed you earlier. And you can sew anywhere you want. So say that you have a little gap over here and you want to sew back over. Just make sure you sew up into adjacent beads so you don't see it. Put in your bead and then sew back through adjacent beads. And you can sew all over the place. Just stay inside the beads, hiding your thread with the thread path of the original peyote, and you'll be fine. Now I want to put on a pearl, I think. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to work through 2 beads. I'm coming out of this bead, and I'll put on my pearl, and then I'll go up through this bead, or you can go down through the side bead here. So let's go ahead and pick up a pearl. I really bent my needle. And then I'm going to pick up a 15-0 seed bead, and I'm going to drop this down. Come on, where's my 15-0? It disappeared. Let me get another one. Okay. Now, as you can see, I'm coming out of this bead right here. I'm going to go back into the pearl, and then I think I will just go over to this one here. Well, I could go back into this one. I think I'll go back into this one right here. As you can see, just make sure you're between the beads properly. I'm going to gently pull my thread through until everything is nice and tight, just like that. And now I can just work out of this bead, or I can sew over. Let's say I want to be in this bead. I can even go from this side this way, but I don't think I want to. I think I want to go here. Do I want to stay in that one? No, I'll go through this one right here. And you see how my thread wrapped around that pearl? That's not going to be good in the end. So make sure you grab it, pull it back out. And then I think I'm going to put on like a little coral bead. So I'm going to pick up this little round coral bead, drop it down, get a 15-0, drop it down. Come on, 15-0. Get down there. All right. Then we're going to go back into the coral bead and back into the stitch we're coming out of on the same side here. You could probably go through the opposite side too, but I think that shows too much thread. So I'm just going back through the same side and pulling it down. And as you can see, I just kind of, I hope I was in camera, but you know what I'm doing. I've shown you several times, just pulling it through, going through the bead and pulling everything through. And you can see I'm just kind of working around that flower. Now I'll do some more fringing through here, and then I'll put up on another flower. I'll probably fringe up high like this, and then make a little bit of room for my flower to go down on this side here, because I think that'll look pretty. So I'll fringe this entire section. I can leave some peyote showing. I can do it in a wave. I can do it however I want. Or you can just fringe through each and every bead. You could come through this one, pick up a cube, come back down through this one, and then put another cube, come back down through this one, and do it in an orderly manner if you would like, however you want to do it. This that I'm doing right now is just random. So I can't show you each and every one and where I place it. I'm just going to place them and do it as I do it, just design how I want them to look and in a random manner. So I'm just going to continue doing this. When I put on my next flower, I can come back and show you that, and then I'll finish up the bracelet and we will tie off. Okay, so you can see I've worked my way over. I've done about an inch. I think it's about an inch, maybe. Let's see. Yeah, about an inch from the last flower. I'm in that area. So I'm going to go right into this area here and put another flower on. I'm coming out of the bead here. After putting this one on, I came up through this bead. So I am just going to grab my flower and do the same thing I did before. I like my flowers to be a little off-centered. You can put them right in the middle, and you do it however you want. This is just however you want to do it. The other thing to make sure of is as you do this that you don't bunch your peyote up too much. You so kind of stretch it out and move it around as you do this to make sure it's not getting bunched up. It will a little bit. As you can see, mine is just slightly, but you don't want it to get really bunched up because then your bracelet isn't going to lay correctly and it's just not going to look as pretty. So I've got an 11-0 seed bead on top of this flower. I'm going back down into it. I'm just going to pick up the flower and with my needle and then just go into the bead next to where I'm putting it on, and then I'm just going to pull this down just like that. Now, if you feel like your flowers aren't secure enough, you can go back through it. So you can go back through the first bead, cross over from the bead you're in, go back into this one, and go back up through the flower, pull it down, go back through the 11-0 seed bead, pull it through, go back down through the flower, and then through the bead that you went through secondary, right there. And then pull it all tight. And get it in position where you want it. And then just sew away a bead or two and start your, so I want to put something here. I think I'll put one of these dark ones because I only have used one so far and that looks kind of weird. So I'm going to do that, and I'm just going to keep working through. I hope I was in frame. It's so hard for me to stay in frame sometimes. I just don't pay attention. So I'm going to put some more beads, and I'm just going to continue doing this until I have it, I have used all 5 of my flowers and have it looking the way I want it to look. So I'm going to continue. Once I'm finished, I will come back and we will go ahead and tie off, and we'll put on our clasping and see how it turned out as far as length is concerned. Okay, so now you can see that I have finished the entire embellishment across the top, doing all my fringing just in a random manner, placing my flowers throughout, just guessing. I didn't really measure anything, just guessing where I wanted them to be. And then after I finished my last little bit of fringing on the other side of this last flower, I've just sewn and made sure I'm coming out of an end 8/0 seed bead here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this thread bridge in between here and make a loop and then tie a knot. And I don't have much thread left. So as you're doing your fringing, you can add more thread. That's not a problem. And you can also add thread anytime you want while you're doing this, just as long as you make your knots very small so that you can pass through the beads nicely. So I'm sorry, I don't know if I was in camera there or not. So I tied a knot on the thread bridge here, and then I sewed up through this bead here, and then I'm just going to sew through my work. I'm going to go through this bead here and sew to the other side and tie another knot. So I'll sew over here, and sew through this one, sew through this one, just as long as you stay to where your thread goes in between the beads and is hidden. I'm going to tie a knot on this thread bridge here, and then go back into the bead, maybe this one here, and sew across again, just making sure my thread goes nice and into the beads here. And come through this last bead. I'm going to cut off my thread, leave a little bit of a tag of thread, and burn it down into the bead here. Make sure you do not burn any of those side threads, because then your whole piece will fall apart. And this is what I have now. I have a nice little bracelet. And my bracelet is, let me see, it's turned out to be about 6.5 inches long. So once I put on my ending here on my clasping, I should have a little over 7 inches, and that will be perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open one of these smaller jump rings, and like I said earlier, this is a heavy gauge jump ring, so that it will be nice and strong. So I'm just going to open it from side to side here and put it onto this wire guardian and close it. It's a heavy gauge jump ring, so it's kind of hard for me to manipulate a little bit here, but I'm getting it. Just take a second. Okay, and then I will open up a bigger jump ring and put it on this side. For my clasping. Of course, you can put a couple of jump rings on here. You don't have to put just one. You can put as many as you want to make it longer, to have an extension. I'll close that better in a minute. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to grab my lobster claw, and I think I'm going to use this kind of medium-sized one. It's about a 6-7 millimeter jump ring, and I think I'm going to use it and put it on to here, put on my clasp, maybe. Come on, you. And close this jump ring here. Whoops. Boy, sorry guys, it's late at night and my eyes aren't working very well and I haven't been feeling very good, so it's just, you know, I'm trying. Okay. Alright, so I may switch it around, see if I want. I may want to put my lobster claw on the other side so that I can manipulate it better. I don't know. But I think this may work just fine. But I think I will switch my lobster claw. I like it to be on this side of my bracelet. And then I will come back and I will show you what it looks like on. But this is what I want you to see, the finished product here, what it looks like. And it's really very pretty. It's really cute. Let me get close and show it to you. Turned out really cute. I really like it. So anyway, I'm going to see if I like my clasping the way I've got it, or I guess it really doesn't matter because I can turn it that way. So I'm going to see if I like my clasping. If I don't like it, I'll switch it. Otherwise, I'm just going to go ahead and try it on and come back and show it to you. And here it is on the wrist. And this is what the clasping looks like. I could dangle something pretty on this clasping if I want to. Make a couple little crystals and on head pins and dangle them on there. But I really don't feel like it needs it. It's got enough decor as is. And it has movement. It's probably turned out to be a little bit more than a 7.5 inch bracelet, probably closer to 7 3/4, which is fine. It's a little bit big, but not terrible. So I like it. I think it turned out really pretty. And I just wanted to show you this technique and what you can do with just a little strip of peyote. And you can do it wider or narrow like I've done it, and just fringe through and make whatever you'd like. You can put a lot of fringe on like I did, or you can put just a little bit and make different patterns with it, whatever you'd like to do. But that's how you make this bracelet, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.